by the end of May.
Well, if they decide they want to change
They will have that option, but it will be connected to the number of credits they have. That may determine their eligibility for a different pathway.
Good evening, thank you. So this slide shows the total cost as we estimate the cost will be for operation of Mandela for next year. That includes salaries, benefits, all the costs of operating the building, including heat, light, and that comes to about $5.5 million for next year. That's all with updated salaries and updated benefits for next year. The average daily attendance, according to our IT department, is about 89 students at this point. We're figuring 80 students, because of the changes, we're figuring 80 students as the number that we're looking at for comparison purposes.
I thought we agreed on we were using 90 for calculation purposes.
So,
All right.
but anyway,
I'll
we
stay
have,
in my lane. You're right. I'm sorry.
we have 80 at the moment. We did have 90, but there was some agreement that with the children that were coming off, that it would be 80 students for next year. So figuring that 80 or 90, at 80, it costs about $69,000 per child to educate a child at Mandela. If we add 10 students, then we'd be dividing it by a different number. That's the number we used. So then we took the costs and moved that over to Friendship Church, a Friendship facility. And we are figuring 8 teachers, 2 administrators, a social worker, and a guidance counselor. That's on the first line on the right-hand side. Then we figured 2 clerical, 3 security, and 2 cleaning staff. These children will be on a separate floor from the other children that are in the building. And then I took all the benefits, and at the bottom there it shows the classroom rental, which will be $30,000 in total for the additional classrooms. $195,000 represents the cost of 1 large bus making a trip in the morning, coming back with the kids at 10:25 to 11 o'clock, then making a second trip. So at one time, there's no more than about 40 kids on site at either BOCES or at Friendship at one time. And we figured we would also have 2 security monitors on the bus. The transportation is subject to change depending upon what we need to do. We may drop the kids at Mandela on the way home. We also have a plan for the children to have their breakfast before they get on the bus. The kids that stay there will get their breakfast. Lunch will be provided coming from the high school, as we do transport lunches now. So they will get all their food. That total estimated cost is about $3.5 million. It comes to $44,000 this year. And in subsequent years, it drops down because we get a 40% BOCES aid. And so we'll have the revenue stream next year, and the actual cost next year will be only $26,000 a pupil. So that's far less than half of what we would be paying if the cost stayed the same in the complete Mandela for next year. Yes, sir.
Just before we get to questions, I'd like to just offer a couple of closing statements. So we all understand what the catalyst for us even looking at this was, but clearly because of the kinds of programs that are currently offered as Mandela, it is cost prohibitive for us to continue on the track that we are on. So while the expansion of the district became the catalyst for this looking at an alternative to the alternative, I think what we've arrived at is a very economically wise, fiscally smart approach. But secondly, it really does in fact provide our students with greater opportunities to, depending on whatever track they're on, custom customized program that really serves their needs. So while the catalyst for this started out as a very uncomfortable exercise, if you will, and anytime we talk about closing a school, no matter what the circumstances are, it's associated with political issues, logistical issues, and a connection. People always have a connection to their home school. But at the end, what we've been able to assemble and present to you this evening really is the best of both worlds, because our students will be able to select the kind of program. So everything we know about research tells us that when students have input in the process, they're more likely to be successful. We also believe that this will increase the attendance. So those youngsters that are not attending school currently for whatever reason now have another incentive, if you will, because many of our students need to work that are in the Mandela program. And this now gives them a viable option to leave high school with a certificate that in fact gives them an edge over some of their competitors for seats that are in the field. We did not show the slide about the course offerings at BOCES, and I wanted to make sure, we did review that? Okay, I wanted to make sure that folks were clear about some of the offerings that are there. So our youngsters really, this broadens their options upon graduation. So I wanted to just capture what I think are the salient points of this presentation this evening, and then open it to questions for our board.
I'm gonna make another comment. Actually, I just was telling the superintendent after hearing this program, it's just so good that I'm almost afraid that the Mandela population is going to increase, and that you're gonna have a lot of kids from the other schools wanting to join the Mandela program, and maybe that will break the bank. But but you know, it's just such a joy to see that out of something, as the superintendent was saying, was at first, you know, very uncomfortable, came something out of it that was just quite amazing in terms of the opportunity that it provides for the children, the youth of this community, to leave with a certificate to go to work at any of these amazing trades and just be ahead of the pack. Mr. Silver, you want to?
Yeah, Leslie stole the thunder already. That was exactly where I was basically going. Have we projected what the incoming class might be for 9th grade, pushing those 12th graders? Has that been considered? And have we considered that students who currently are attending, because if we're basing this budget based upon 80 students and the attendance increase to 30 students based upon what Mr. Zamora just said, have we budgeted that fact, understanding being on the budget committee, that we've already discussed the fact that there's very minimum amount of savings here, considering that while we may have these savings initially the first year, when we move into the second year's budget next year, those savings will be diminished because we will begin to pick up those operating costs again when we begin to open the KA program over at the old Mandela building. So let's not be blinded that there's real savings here per se. And then considering my question, have we considered the projection, understanding that these numbers may look good now, but if the program tends to be what we consider it may be, as Mr. Moore just said, we may be looking at a higher projection of students that's participating in this program.
So that would not impact the next budget cycle. First of all, because Mandela will be offline for a year while the renovations are occurring. Secondly, one of the other things that we are tasked with, quite frankly, is that we really begin to look at the characteristics of student profile that currently capture students that land in Mandela. And if we look at the information that we have at our disposal, we should be able to begin to identify students who may be undercredited or potentially undercredited and overaged, or youngsters who we really recognize need a non-traditional program. If we start to use that information more effectively and identify these youngsters as early as 4th and 5th grade, we can then put resources in place so that we front load and eliminate the need for some students who would generally find themselves in Mandela, which unfortunately has gotten a bad rap as being like the last ditch effort, the last stop. And we want to change that. We want to change that by creating programs and services that provide the necessary supports to students earlier on. So while that could happen, we did not anticipate an increase in the 18-19 fiscal year, because we need to do a better job organizationally to make certain that we are identifying these youngsters earlier on and not putting them in a situation or not allowing them to be in a situation that they have to use the system.
So then might I ask, being that this is budget season and as a committee, we identified some potential issues that we might have moving forward, not necessarily with this budget year, but the coming budget years. Might I ask that we begin to target those and that we be presented with those numbers of the potential students that we have that might be over-credited, over-aged, that are currently not attending Mandela, or maybe attending Mandela in the future based upon where they are at this present moment. Can we get some type of report?
Well, before we continue on this line, Mr. Silver has a present for you that he didn't disclose and he will speak to. I don't want to steal his thunder, but there's two things regarding the BOCES program. He's wondering, like, what is that? The other thing is that don't forget, we're trying to build our own capacity to a lot of this here locally. So hopefully by 2018, 2019, we're going to really be underway with maybe not all of those, but a good number of them. The second piece is that there is a savings actually the second year because it's aided. Mr. Silver.
So I kind of spoke to that before, so
Vision, okay.
the cost of the transportation and the tuition are aided at the transportation is aided at 72%, and the tuition is aided at 40%. But what you said or alluded to earlier is true. This savings, besides the BOCES program, is for 1 year. When we reopen that building, the 18-19 budget will then have the